Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting
1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles. Stone by day, warriors by night. We were betrayed by the humans we had sworn to protect, frozen in stone by a magic spell for 1,000 years. Now here in Manhattan, the spell is broken, and we live again. We are defenders of the night. We are gargoyles.
You just heard Keith David's Goliath explain the premise behind 1994's Gargoyles, a unusually adult cartoon for the Walt Disney Corporation that I am very excited to revisit because it's been a long time since I thought about this one, but I remember loving the crap out of it when I was a teenager. So you have my guest to thank for this pick. You've heard her before talking about 90s cartoons. That's what we bring her in here for, apparently. So please welcome back to the podcast, my sister, Amy Baum.
Hi.
So, Amy, why did you pick Gargoyles for this episode?
Wow, I just remember loving this cartoon so much. So, I mean, of course, as 90s kids, the Disney afternoon was kind of a staple. And I would say probably this and Darkwing Duck were probably my top two, my favorite two. DuckTales definitely being a close third. And I probably watched a bunch of these, but there was something about Gargoyles, especially because by the time Gargoyles came out, I was in middle school. The fact that it was kind of darker, it was edgier, I could appreciate that more. And I loved, I could recognize a lot of the, Shakespeare references. And I'm a history buff, so I got into the historical part of it. And then I think at the time, I could just kind of identify with them being, I guess, outsiders being different. My middle school experience was not great. So, I mean, I could just there was something about, just identifying with them being different and being the other that just kind of spoke to me at the time.
Yeah, you pinged on a bunch of things that I think are compelling about the show as well. And we'll get into a lot of those details. Their status as outsiders, the interesting way in which this show heavily just borrows from Shakespeare and history and reinterpolates that stuff is really cool and unique to this show. And I certainly have fond memories of watching it. You mentioned the Disney afternoon, of which this was part. We did do a DuckTales episode. And at the time, I remember thinking about, okay, well, the Disney afternoon is DuckTales and Rescue Rangers and Tailspin and Darkwing Duck. And then there was like that Bonkers show. And then there was, a few others. And I had completely forgotten that Gargoyles was part of the Disney afternoon at one point. It's so different from everything else in there. This is the only show that they ever did that was this, level of dark and edgy. So there's a lot of things that make this show very unique for a Disney property, and even just among cartoons in general. It's very different from most of the things you would watch in the Disney afternoon. I remember, in terms of like nostalgic memories, working really hard to try and draw these characters because I thought their designs were so cool, and then to try and create my own sort of gargoyle designs based on this artwork, because it's extremely they're all extremely complicated looking characters that must have been very difficult to animate.
Oh, absolutely. And I know they sent a lot of these cartoons overseas. And I mean, of course, they tried to send, I think the studio in Japan probably got a lot of their best animation. And of course, these shows, like, they had to get, like, I don't know, however many episodes in, like, a short amount of time.
I can't confirm it for this show, but there is a Japanese studio called Tokyo Movie Shinjo, or TMS, that you will see on a lot of 90s cartoons. They are most famous for being the Japanese studio behind the movie Akira, this seminal anime work that is just this exceptionally animated, well-animated film and highly regarded and influential and all of that. But they were financially in a little bit of trouble in the 90s and late 80s, so they started taking this moonlighting work from America, which included working on a lot of these Disney shows. They did work on Batman, the animated series. And so often, they didn't do all of the show, but sometimes you look in like some of their best episodes of those shows or like some of the most interesting detailed animation work. It's because of them.
Absolutely. So, I think like anything that went to Japan or Disney Australia had to have been like some of the best animated shows on the Disney afternoon.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just because those studios were like hungry to prove themselves too. It's like, see, we can do this. We can take your gargoyle character and have him do this crazy tumbling animation and then climb back up a building. Here you go. But we should talk about the premise of the show, like the characters. Like as you heard in the intro, they are stone by day, warriors by night. And it's just a really cool concept. Like I don't think anyone. I mean, the idea of something that turns into a monster at night. Or monsters that wake up at night. That's not new. That's as old as dirt. But this version of it is really unique and fun.
Absolutely. I mean, and to bring them these medieval warriors find a really cool way to bring them into a modern world, and they adapt to the modern world pretty easily.
I'm glad you said that because we watched the 5-parter, which is like the first 5 episodes of the show are basically one story, telling the basic outline of how they were cursed in the late 900s and revived in the 90s. And yeah, if they had spent too much time on this fish out of water stuff, it would be really like just taxing after a while. Just like, okay, we get it. He doesn't know what a hot dog is. Okay. But they move past that fairly quickly because I think the show would drag if it was bogged down with that too much.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I guess we should run through the characters. Did you notice? This is the first time I went back to it and noticed, like, basically they are the Ninja Turtles.
I saw the parallel, and I actually did watch the 87 Ninja Turtles back in the day, probably when I was about, 7 years old, around that time. But I think they do try to make them somewhat distinguished, like, when they eat the food, like, I think seems like they're very careful not to have them eat pizza, for one thing.
Yeah, you're right. I never see them eat pizza in the show. But, like, just in terms of personality, right? It's like Hudson taught them to be gargoyle teens, Goliath leads, Lexington does machines, Brooklyn's cool but rude, and Broadway is a party dude. Like, it's fairly...
That's kind of true. Yeah. And then, of course, they have their own little gargoyle dog.
So here's my question about Bronx, the dog, quote-unquote dog. Is he considered a separate species of gargoyle? Like, it'd be like... Because I thought it was like a human wouldn't give birth to a dog, but, like, they come from eggs, right? The gargoyle, yeah. They establish that. They lay eggs. And just some of the eggs just, like, hatch into the dog ones that don't talk?
So I sent you that... I did send you the podcast of Voices from the Eyrie, and I don't know if they talk about it on this or if you go on, like, their wiki page. I think, like, the dogs are called Gargates. So they're like a version of gargoyles.
It just seems so weird. Like, imagine, like, every once in a while, like, you go into the hospital and the lady goes, "Oh, is it a boy or a girl?" It's like, "Oh, nope, it's a puppy." It's because they do establish, so the eggs, right? There's this clutch of gargoyle eggs that are not, they're thought to be possibly destroyed in the 900s, but it turns out they were spirited away and to somewhere to be kept safe. And when in this set of Avalon episodes, they go to the mystical Arthur. Oh, that's another thing they bring in, Arthurian legend. But they go to the island of Avalon, this from King Arthur myth, and there they find their long lost gargoyle hatchlings, which includes one of these Gargates, right? The dog ones.
Right.
So, again, implying that he hatched from the same clutch of eggs as all of the, like, bipedal sentient ones.
Yeah, maybe there's just a certain time when they're in heat and they mate. I don't know.
It depends on what you eat before you lay the egg. It's like, oh, that's going to be a dog. Anyway, we can get off of this weird tangent. So, of the main gargoyles, do you have a favorite character?
Of the main gargoyles, let's see. I guess of the heroes, I don't know. I love Brooklyn. Brooklyn is just so cool.
Ouch. Ouch.
How many times are you going to try that?
Until you figure out a way to get us out of this. Ouch. Ouch. Hey, I'm getting tired of this.
Did you see how the lights dimmed when you did that?
Oh, sorry. No, I was too busy writhing in agony to notice.
And then, of course, they bring Angela in later, and I always liked her.
Yeah, Brooklyn is engineered to be cool, for sure. Like, when I booted it up on Disney Plus, the image you see is Brooklyn in a leather jacket riding a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle, yeah. Which he does in an episode.
Okay, I figured he must do it in some episode. I don't remember noticing it. But it was like, oh, he looks like... The image sort of looks like the Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell album cover. Mm-hmm. It's like super metal. Like, even more metal than the show naturally is. They're also good-natured and sweet. I really like them.
Yeah, like Brooklyn is like so cool, but he has a good heart. You can tell.
Yeah, Brooklyn is cool. His voice actor is Jeff Bennett, who is one of these guys. Is just like he's every voice in everything. He's just so prolific.
And he's other characters in Gargoyles too. He's Owen and he's the Magus, among others.
Yeah, that makes sense. Broadway, who's a lot of fun. I like him. His voice actor is. God, I can't pronounce that guy's name, but he's Patrick Starfish from SpongeBob. Mm-hmm. And once you hear it, like, you can't unhear it. It's that big stupid voice that he does. And Bill Faberbaki? I can't remember.
Fagerbaki, something.
Yeah. I thought they did a lot to give him way more pathos than I thought he was capable of. Like, in that episode where he accidentally shoots Elisa with her own gun.
That's a big episode. And I think TV Guide actually mentioned that one, and it got banned from syndication when like Toon Disney showed like reruns of these shows back in like the early aughts.
Really, because of the gun violence?
Yeah, but it's like, okay, you kind of missed the point. The point of the episode was about gun safety and the fact that guns aren't toys.
Right. I was going to say, like, it's the opposite of glorifying gun violence. He does it, and he feels the whole episode is about how guilt-ridden he is for nearly killing her. And you really see how sensitive he is. I mean, because in the 5-part Awakening episode, they sort of show him as like, oh, he's the big dumb guy who likes to eat. But then you see like how, he's very sensitive and good-natured. And yeah, I mean, he actually really owns up to the fact that he accidentally shoots Elisa. I mean, yeah, I think though even though it's kind of the easy choice, my favorite is Goliath.
Who doesn't love Goliath?
Yeah, I always gravitate to these kind of leader characters that are sort of sage but have strength beneath when called upon. He reminds me of like Captain Picard in that way. Like he's got that same kind of noble bearing and like wisdom that I gravitate towards. Plus, again, Keith David is his voice actor. How amazing is Keith David?
Oh yeah, no, you hear that voice. It's so distinct. And I think that podcast I sent you, Voices from the Eyrie, they talked about they auditioned a lot of people for Goliath before they got to Keith David. And I think at one point they were even considering Patrick Stewart, and he wanted too much money. But yeah, I can't imagine anyone other than Keith David playing Goliath.
Well, he's got that like capability of like roaring too. And if you don't know who Keith David is, he's been around forever. Another big notable voice role for him. He's Dr. Facilier in Princess and the Frog. He's the bad guy in that. And of course, one of his most famous roles, one of his earliest ones, it might have been his first movie role, is opposite Kurt Russell in John Carpenter's The Thing. He's the last man, along with Kurt Russell. He's the last man ? Standing in that movie. And of course he's great, and he's been great in a million other things. But God, that voice, man, like you put you to sleep. It's like a kitten purring. It's incredible.
But then he has that capacity when he has those moments where he's so angry and he gets dark. Like when in the Awakening episode, when he confronts the captain and Hakon, and he wants to kill them, and of course they just fall to their death. He doesn't get to do it, and that anger when he says he's been denied his revenge is just so powerful.
All the humans are gone, taken prisoner most likely.
Then we will find them. We will save the humans. And we will have our revenge! I've been denied everything, even my revenge!
Well, and he does that like roar that is like so like kind of iconically just like that is what a screaming gargoyle would sound like. That like they use that it's in the intro, right? It's just hit that shot of him on this parapet going like, it's great. Well, I guess you heard it because I put in the intro So it's just some incredible voice acting from him. And then, gosh, who else is left? We haven't touched on Lexington, who I forget his voice actor's name. He sort of sounds like Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. He's got this very kind of soft voice, and he's the small one. His wings are also different than everybody else too. Like the others all have like wings that grow out of their back, and he's like a flying squirrel. Like they're sort of like attached to his arms and his legs.
Right. And then, of course, he's sort of like the Donatello. He's the one that is very interested in machines and how things work. And, he really adapts to the modern world so easily because he's the one that can figure out the computers and fix, he builds a helicopter and does all these cool things with machines.
He builds a helicopter? I don't remember that.
There's an episode where he crashes a helicopter and rebuilds it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's definitely in keeping with, like, the Donatello mold.
The police can have them after I'm through with them.
Look, Lex, I know how you feel. You trusted them and they used you. Nearly got you and Goliath killed. I feel the same way every time somebody mentions Demona. But you can't let it consume you. You need to remember what's really important. Family, protecting our home.
You have your priorities, and I have mine.
I gotta tell you, Lex, you're starting to worry me.
Look,
Guess it's a no-show.
I'm checking it out.
Come on, Bronx. No sense staying up here where it's safe.
And I like it, but not only yes, he has those wings and he will glide. They do talk about all of them as like they can't exactly fly. They glide. And that
they glide on currents of wind, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of comes up from time to time. Like they're not just like they can't just like flap away and do everything they want whenever they want. They do have to sort of. It's at least a little bit tied to real world physics. And that just leaves Hudson, who is Ed Asner, doing a great Scottish brogue there. Again, like maybe the only actor you could find with like a more gravelly, like leader sounding voice than Keith David.
Right, but he's the grandfather of the group.
Well, I think it's implied that he was the leader before Goliath, right?
Before Goliath. Goliath was his second in command, and then eventually, he steps down and Goliath took over at some point.
Yeah. Ed Asner, again, legendary actor who, voice performance. He's the old man in Up, but he was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and just a million things. So you have him, and that's the main group of heroes. You have Demona, and kind of moving. She's sort of a hero, sort of a villain. They kind of keep moving her back and forth as need be.
For all intents and purposes, she's a villain, and she's probably, I would say one of my favorite villains in the show.
They hold each other's lives completely without worth. Do you really think they would accept us with open arms?
No.
And this is not the worst of it. We must make Goliath see the truth. Humanity will never trust or accept us.
But not all humans are like that. Elisa is our friend.
Perhaps the policewoman is the exception that proves the rule. But can she keep you safe from the rest of humanity? Only we can protect each other, Brooklyn. We must be united and strong, and willing to deal with the humans as they would deal with us. Goliath thinks we can hide in their midst like mice and hope for their understanding. This is not possible. Remember what happened to Goliath and Lexington? They were hunted like animals because Lexington trusted the pack.
How did you know?
If you think I'm wrong, then show yourself to them. Very wise, my young friend. They would shoot you down like a dog.
They definitely make her very layered and complex, and certainly, like, from, you know, it's very hard to know what her true motivations are, other than that she's very spiteful. You know, she just hates humans.
But that comes from a place of guilt, because, I mean, you find out she was the one who was responsible for the betrayal of the Klan. She makes that deal with the captain, and, of course, a lot of that is, you know, deep down, she knows she's responsible, she has that guilt, but she can't face that. And, I mean, basically, humanity is her scapegoat, and she blames the humans for all her suffering, when really she brought most of her suffering and misery on herself.
Yeah, which is very hard, obviously, to acknowledge. She, played by Mariana Sirtis, Deanna Troi from Star Trek The Next Generation. And as long as we're on that subject, there's a lot of Star Trek The Next Generation folks rattling around the Gargoyles studio, because you have Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker, as Xanatos, their less than trustworthy benefactor, who he's responsible. So the curse they're under is they're going to be stoned forever until their castle is above the clouds. And so Xanatos, this wealthy magnate, literally moves the castle brick by brick to the top of this Manhattan high-rise to fulfill this spell, break it, set them free, and he continues to let them live there rent-free on top of his high-rise. But it's interesting, like, no matter how untrustworthy he is, they do stay with Castle Wyvern.
Actually, they don't. They live leave. They live up on the because after he's arrested, they go to the clock tower that's above the police station where Elisa works.
Oh, they do eventually leave Castle Wyvern. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think at the end of the season 2, they do go back to the castle, because the clock in the third, those 3 final episodes of season 2, Hunter's Moon, the clock tower is destroyed.
Okay. That makes more sense, because, yeah, Xanatos, you cannot trust him at all.
The truth is that my men repelled an invasion by a rival corporation trying to steal some of our new technology.
Repelled an invasion? You're a private citizen, Xanatos, not a country.
Detective, I am the owner of a multinational corporation, which is bigger than many countries you could name.
And he's just such a cool villain. He's not like that typical mustache-twisting villain. Like, even if he somehow foil a plan, like, somehow there's always that, oh, but this actually benefited me in some way, so it's a win.
Yeah, I love how he does that. Like, no matter what happens, he finds a way to, like, use his, like, wits to say, well, actually, you did a good thing, everybody. I'm still the good guy, and everything turned out for the better. Even though what happened was just to directly benefit him and whatever his horrible machinations are. Yeah,
and then also the fact, I like that he never holds a grudge against the Gargoyles.
No, it's just like he's so happy to keep them kind of close and occasionally doing what he needs them to do. He's just like, yeah. Like, in terms of his, like, intensity, it's interesting. Like, the needle never goes above, like, a 3. In terms of, like, you never see him, like, freaking out or yelling or anything. He's always calm.
Yeah, he very is. He kind of has that, comes off as very charming when you first meet him. I mean, you can't trust him. Like, one thing I love about Elisa, like, Elisa just knows right off the bat, like, she can see through his bullshit.
Yeah, Elisa she's an NYPD detective, and she is the April O'Neil, to continue our Ninja Turtles comparison here, and she helps them out. She introduces them to the modern world and is their protector, sometimes quite literally saving their lives. and she's their connection to the human world, especially because they can't rely on Xanatos and these other people. But I do want to mention Owen, because I just find him funny. That this is Xanatos' Smithers, and he's like a mega Smithers.
I was so close to finding out if the legend was true. Now there's no one to test it on.
Allow me, sir. It would appear that the cauldron spell of immortality has a price.
Yes. What was the legend? Whoever bathes in it will live as long as the mountain stones? How literal-minded. Thank you, Owen. That'll be all.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's not, like, in love with Xanatos the way Smithers is in love with Mr. Burns, but yeah. And then, of course, later on...
Yeah, he's not so played for laughs, but, like...
No.
Yeah, he does have this voice. Yes, sir.
Yeah, very straight man. And then, of course, ironically, you find out later that he's actually Puck.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. So, Puck... again, Shakespeare characters start popping up here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Puck is played by Brent Spiner, Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. I told you there was a lot of them rattling around here, and he's a big one. So when that stuff doesn't really start coming in heavily until season 2. Although Macbeth, I believe, shows up in season 1.
Yeah,
and he is the historical Scottish King Macbeth, and I think the conceit for the show is that all of Shakespeare's plays are about these are the real life people that Shakespeare was writing about.
Right, like it's like the for Midsummer Night's Dream, you get Puck, Titania, and Owen, and they're shapeshifters and they're magical creatures, and Oberon's like the king of like Avalon and a lot of like
the
legendary characters. Yeah, and a lot of legendary characters are these different cultures are these shapeshifters.
Yeah, I think they call them at one point the third race. So there's humans, gargoyles, and these people who, again, are these magical shapeshifters. But again, you also have these other Shakespearean figures. So you have Macbeth, the Scottish king. You also have the witches, a.k.a. the Weird Sisters from Macbeth. They are prominently featured. You've got, I mentioned King Arthur is in it.
You have a little... You have a little bit of Othello because they have the whole thing with Coldstone, where he's the cyborg gargoyle with like the multiple personalities with like, it's him and like two other gargoyles in his head. And there's there's one episode where they kind of show like that kind of Othello plot where Iago says, hey, Goliath is betraying you, with, your girlfriend. I never really got into that aspect of the show. That wasn't really my favorite.
Just because you didn't know Othello that well?
Maybe.
It's a good play. It's a great one. Also you have Demona, which is kind of a nod to Desdemona from that. Although Desdemona...
Sorry. I mean, I was going to say Demona fulfills more of a Lady Macbeth kind of role.
I was going to say Desdemona in Othello is not a villain. That's kind of the point. She's not cheating on him. And she's been true and honest the entire time. And he's so suspicious he can't not see that when he looks at her. But still, I think you have, they're trying to make that nod early by borrowing that name. Although it's also more like demon,
I think that was the point, because in the scene where Macbeth gives her the name, like you see before, he says to her, "You fight like a demon."
Yeah, and then the daughter, of course, is Angela.
Angela.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing about their names, which is weird. That I guess culturally, gargoyles don't have names unless they decide to start using a nickname that a human gives them. So I guess that's just I'm sure they just wrote that because they had this fun idea of giving them all these New York names. But I just found that to be like, you can't have a society where people don't have names. Like, you can't. What are you going to do? Oh, could you go give a message to so and so? You can't do that if you don't know their name. Or we can say, go get the fat blue one.
Right, but it's interesting how Hudson explains it from a gargoyle's perspective, and he says, like, why do you humans have to name everything? Why do you have to give everything limits?
I guess, but also, it'd be very fumbling if you couldn't actually, like, describe what you wanted.
Exactly, like, how they ask, like, how do you tell each other apart? And even when Goliath and Elisa come to Avalon and they meet their hatchlings, and Goliath's like, oh, you gave them names, and Angela's just like, well, yeah, how could you tell us apart? And of course, the difference there is culturally, I mean, the gargoyles on Avalon were raised by humans.
Right. And Avalon in the show's mythology, it is the Arthurian island, but it has this added twist that it's out of time. So
it's slower.
Yeah, the time passes on Avalon very slow compared to the rest of the world. So all of these people that they knew in the 900s are older, but they're obviously not dead. They're
right.
Just...
So it was sort of like a plot device to keep those characters alive 1,000 years later.
Of course, yeah. I mean, although they could have just easily employed some kind of time travel. They're writing magical rules, so.
Right, but they already have the Phoenix Gate, which is sort of the time travel. And it's the time travel rules on Gargoyles are interesting. It's always like history can't be changed. And of course, even when people go back in time with the Phoenix Gate, it's like, well, yeah, it happened. That's how it was supposed to happen.
Yeah, well, so there's that episode arc that takes place on Avalon involving, what's his name, the Grand Magus?
The Archmage.
Archmage, thank you. I liked that because you watched him like, he's basically being tutored by a future version of himself that has, gathered these magical objects and now has all of this magical strength that his younger self did not. And you watch him, like, he has to, like, walk him through acquiring this stuff and learning how to use it and then go back. And you actually see this moment in time from earlier in the episode where instead of being, now he's the one who's about to go back in time and do the thing you just saw for his younger self. And so I thought that was, as a little time loop, that was pretty cool.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And of course they use that in other shows as other episodes as well. Vows, where Xanatos gets married. That really centers around the Phoenix Gate.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few magical gewgaws in play. You've got the Phoenix Gate. There's the Eye of Odin, bringing in Norse mythology. And that just, as far as I understand, the Eye of Odin is just like mega magical power, right?
It's sort of like, I think the way they explain is it makes you like kind of an inner manifestation, makes you like a bigger version of yourself. So there's an episode where Fox wears it. It's Xanatos' engagement present to her. And she becomes like a werewolf fox type creature. There's that one. Of course, the Avalon episodes where the Archmage has it. And then they have the episodes where it's Goliath, Elisa, Angela, and Bronx, where Avalon sends them to all these different places all over the world. And there is an episode where they go to Norway and meet Odin. And in that one, Goliath wears the eye.
And what happens to him?
He just sort of becomes like a bigger protector. Like he's like doing all these kind of awful things, and he's like, he puts him in a cave and he's like from storms, and he's like, oh, I'm protecting you from the storms. And it's like, he's the one who's doing it. And yeah, of course they have to kind of get through to him to get him to be like, take that thing off.
Mm-hmm. That's a classic arc for sure. Mm-hmm. The person has to give up their power, which they are inadvertently abusing. And then the other one is the Nostalgia Arcanum. No, the book. What's it called?
The Grimorum.
The Grimorum. It's like two words though. It's like the Grimorum Arcanorum.
Grimorum Arcanorum. Yeah, it's a spell book.
Right, just a spell book, which apparently you can just eat, and as the Archmage does. I found that so funny because I did not remember this. So the rule is, of course, you can't bring this.
You can't bring it onto Avalon, but he bends the rule by just eating it.
But the animation on that is so funny because it's just this like this jaw just goes like open way wide and he just shoves it in. It's like without chewing. It's very funny.
Yeah, they got some interesting animation like that in other episodes.
Yeah, and again, like the quality of this animation is so high given the complexity of the Gargoyles' designs. We've talked around this a little bit, but that the writing is grittier here, And I was like, I bet this owes a debt in some way to Batman the Animated Series because that show was, pushing a much darker cartoon vibe that was still, accessible to kids. And of course, come to learn that the two writers behind a lot of it, the Reeveses, both worked on that show before they started Gargoyles. It was like, oh, of course, there's your connection. No wonder. Right. And I don't know that these episodes they do have more in common the way they're written with things like Ninja Turtles than Batman, which Batman would be these very almost they could be funny and weird, but usually they were very somber affairs that were almost like Twilight Zone episodes where there was a sad little twist at the end. And that's not this show.
Not really. I mean, you had a few episodes that could kind of end on sort of a down note, but most of them it was like, okay, yeah, we saved the day in some way, and even the villain, like Xanatos, could be like, oh, well, this worked for my benefit.
Yeah, we've talked about, some of the key villains, Demona and Xanatos. I guess we should talk now about Puck and the Fair Folk, because Puck is definitely, they're villains, or at least they're highly chaotic, even if they're not exactly evil.
I mean, Oberon, I think, eventually does he tries to steal Xanatos' baby, so.
That's very fairy, par for the course stuff, is fairy stealing babies. But, Puck is, so they really borrow from Shakespeare the idea that, he's a trickster. And whatever you tell him to do, it's always a monkey's paw wish with him. And so in that episode about the mirror, where this is kind of a big one. So Demona wants to, I forget what she's trying to do, but the end result is all the gargoyles are turned into humans, and all of the humans in New York are turned into gargoyles.
Well, let's just get this over with, shall we? How can I be of service? Out with it. I haven't got all night.
You've got all millennium if I choose. I'm too vulnerable during the day. I don't want to turn to stone anymore.
Of course, you want to stroll down Fifth Avenue in the sunshine. I'm sure you'll fit right in.
I could if there were no blasted humans. Yes, Puck. I want you to get rid of the humans. All of them.
Does this look like Aladdin's lamp? I have limits, after all. What is it you really want? How quaint. After all these centuries, you're still carrying a torch. Well, if that's what you want, I can make him love you again. Piece of cake. Given your charming personality.
That's it. That's what I want. If you cannot get rid of all the humans, then at least rid me of that human. Elisa Maza.
Did you say that human or that human? Oh, never mind. I'll figure it out.
Of course she wants to get rid of the humans, and of course he's like, hey, come on, I have limits. So eventually it's like, she says, oh, well, if you can't get rid of all humans, at least get rid of Elisa Maza. Because she, obviously she hates Elisa. She knows that there's, the relationship between Goliath and Elisa, there's a lot of sexual tension there. So of course, Puck, being the trickster, turns her into a gargoyle, and then she's like, okay, fine, do that to all the humans. So he turns them into gargoyles, and then she's pissed off, and she says, turn them to humans. So then he turns Goliath and his clan to humans.
Yeah, it's all, this cascading series of, like I said, monkey's paw wishes, right? Where it's like, that's not what I asked for. It's like, oh, but you said. It's a lot of that stuff. But it lets you know, how powerful he is, that he can just, with a snap of a finger, transform everyone in New York into a different species.
All right. That was just one of the best episodes in terms of, seeing, they're about being seen as the other. It's interesting when they change, or sort of an amnesia effect, where, Elisa changes into a gargoyle, and she's like, Goliath, you've changed. And they're like, no, you changed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was an interesting... They didn't have to add that, but it's an interesting little complication, because that same thing happens to them too, and they're like, "Oh, what do you mean? We've always been human." I like it was interesting, the human designs for the gargoyles. What would they look like if they were humans? I think those are pitch perfect.
Oh yeah, because I think they were trying to model them off of the voice actors to a certain extent.
That makes sense. Sure, although Goliath is I mean, Keith David is a strapping man, but
Right.
Goliath is this he looks more like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like he's this huge.
Well, I mean, they have to
dude.
keep the long black hair, and then they also matched his skin tone to Elisa's. I know Keith David is African American, and Elisa, which is one thing is noteworthy, is that she was probably one of the first lead women of color in a cartoon, and not only that, she's biracial. Her, she's part Native American, part African American.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see that. I didn't realize that until that episode where she gets shot and her family comes to meet her at the hospital. I was like, that's a bold choice for 1995.
Right, and then also the voice actress who voiced Elisa was, same part Native American, part African American.
Well, there's your answer. I'm sure they probably did that to be respectful to her, or to to say oh, that's a cool thing to do, to honor your heritage that way. You mentioned you had a lot of notes on this, so let me kind of hand it over to you a little bit. If there was something you wanted specifically to focus on,
in the mirror specifically.
Any episode. I mean, I just know you took a lot of notes, so I didn't know if there was a subject you wanted to do a deep dive on. I'm happy to go with you.
Okay. Well, I know I kind of suggested certain episodes for certain reasons. I definitely the City of Stone episodes. Those 4 episodes, they're so important for just seeing Damona's backstory, and particularly the story with Macbeth, the fact that, they, become the Weird Sisters make them immortal, and they're essentially bound to each other. They, feel each other's pain. The only way they can die is if one kills the other. And then it's kind of interesting when you get to the Avalon episodes, and it was sort of like, really, you just did all of that just so, however many hundreds of years later, they could sort of be pawns in, when the Archmage's trying to get Avalon and have them get Avalon back as a revenge.
And he is the one that lays that spell on them, right? The one has to kill the other spell.
That's the Weird Sisters do it.
Oh, the Weird Sisters do it. Well, they're also kind of playing this long con with them, and it's great because when they first revealed Damona in the 5-part Awakenings stuff, it's she lies about how long she's been alive. She just says, "Oh well, Xanatos woke me up first before waking up the rest of you." And in reality, she is the one who probably told him exactly, go to the castle, bring it, gave him all the instructions as to how to bring back her clan.
Right. I mean, and you can tell she's lying pretty easily because when they go to get that quote, the disc back, take it back for Xanatos. And it's obvious, she's she's too competent in the modern world to have just been woken up.
But also that they have the restraint to not show all those cards. One thing we haven't really said it outright, which is that this is serialized storytelling.
Right.
None of the other cartoons we mentioned really do. Even Batman the Animated Series, there are a handful of things that are will persist in that show. So once Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, he's Two-Face for the rest of the run of the show. But it's not like each episode of Batman it feeds off of the previous one, and certainly not for stuff like DuckTales, right? So this is a big choice for them to say, no, you've got to watch these episodes in order, to the degree where each episode starts with a last time on.
All right, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we want to start at the beginning, and then you want to go all the way to the end.
I remember that being frustrating when I was watching it, back on when it was on TV, because it was on every day as part of the Disney afternoon, and if you missed it, you just had to, wait till that episode aired again.
Hard
several
hard
months.
to catch every day in middle school. And then also the fact that in 1995, episodes were preempted by the OJ trial.
I was going to say, this was something... OJ killed 2 people and gargoyles. More or less. I think, it did keep preempting things because it was in the middle of the afternoon. And maybe not on the East Coast, but certainly here on the West Coast. Because I would imagine a trial on the West Coast would be over. Well, no, actually, no, that would not work. It would be the other way around. It would be the trial would be well underway here while it was afternoon on the East. So yeah, you're right. The OJ trial absolutely would have killed anything that was on TV at that time because we just had to know: did he really do it? What do you think, Amy? Did O.J. Simpson really kill those people?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure at the time I thought he did it.
I'm pretty sure he did it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he did write that
Probably,
wonderful book, If I Did It. Anyway, we digress. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, that did make it harder to watch. Are there any other big villains we haven't really touched on? We haven't talked about Macbeth too much, but he's, like... I'm not even sure what his goal is, because he's not the one who sacks the castle at the beginning of the series and kills most of the gargoyles.
I think mainly his thing is his beef is with Demona, and he's clearly suicidal. Like, he wants to die. And
he's tired of being alive for 1,000 years.
I have hunted you through the centuries for my vengeance.
Take off that mask. You aren't fooling anyone, Macbeth.
I wear this as a reminder of your treachery.
Let's not start that again. You blame me, I blame you. Aren't you tired of talking about it?
I'm not here to talk.
Then what? You know the rules. Killing me will gain you nothing but your own death.
After this long a lifetime, I have no fear of that, and no desire to live in the kind of world you're creating. Revenge is a dish best eaten cold, Demona. And I have waited 900 years for this meal.
right, especially you see in City of Stone, like, Demona kind of caused his misery too. I mean, he was forced to essentially, like, you know, he had to essentially leave his wife, and he lost his kingdom, and he had to leave his wife and child.
Yeah. And, who's his voice actor? That's another big somebody.
John Rhys-Davies.
John Rhys-Davies, thank you. Of course, Gimli from Lord of the Rings and Sala from Indiana Jones. I always like, whenever we have a voice actor, I like to kind of name check things that they're in, because you may not know who they are without seeing their face. But, great performance from him, as always. He's got that wonderful, just booming voice that's one of a kind.
Right, and then you have he's not in too many episodes, but Tony Dracon, who you meet in Deadly Force.
Yeah, he's like a street gang kind of guy.
Pretty much, it's like the typical like New York crime boss. You'd feel like this is probably the type of scumbag that Elisa probably deals with on a daily basis in her job.
It's funny to see the media conception of gangs and how that has changed over time, especially from the 80s. And this kind of carries over this idea of like, it's all kind of like that movie The Warriors. Usually it's always like these highly themed gangs of guys that are like, we're just out for a good time. Woo-hoo! Like, that's the gang. And it's not literally, they never seem like guys that will carjack and kill you. They're these like threatening themed cartoon gangs. Slight sneak preview for our upcoming episode on Adventures in Babysitting. They make an appearance there. But yeah, like it's just a funny thing to me that like the gangs they go up against, because there's a few times that they're foiling carjackers. In fact, I think in the Mirror episode there's an attempted mugging or carjacking, and it's these three dudes, these sort of like Rocksteady and Bebop guys that are like, I think they're in the Awakenings pilot episodes as
Awakenings. Well. I think they're in the first episode of the Avalon episodes too.
Yeah. Okay. So these like mugs keep coming back for more. Yeah. Any other big characters or episodes you want to touch on that we haven't touched on yet?
I did want to talk a little bit about the world tour, because I do like those episodes where they do go to different countries, and of course they're like, they find like different children of Oberon, where it's like they go to Ireland and they find, you know, they're up against the Banshee, or there's one where they go to Arizona, they're dealing with Coyote from Indian legend. The one I actually watched was Sanctuary, and the reason I watched it is because it had Thalog.
Right, who is of course, Goliath backwards. He is reverse Goliath.
Right, very evil. So I guess the idea is, the villain that's created him, so it's Dr. Savarius, voiced by Tim Curry, and he's, you know, kind of like that evil geneticist. He's the one who has a hand with Xanatos in mutating Elisa's brother, and yeah, he's the one. They kind of create Thalog. They give him a lot of knowledge, and I think they want to give him like Xanatos' slant on things, so it's sort of like he's, you know, Goliath, but his thinking is like Xanatos on crack.
Yeah, they've corrupted him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but getting sort of just to that world tour concept in general, like they've already dipped kind of a toe into this idea of like all the mythological things are real, and here they just sort of dive in. You're like, yeah, like let's go to all these different parts of the world and meet mythological creatures and figures from other mythologies, and it makes the world feel very alive and magical in a fun way. Mm-hmm. It adds a great texture to the show that, again, like this is something that just would not be, I can't think of any other show that does anything like this.
Right. And then the other thing about it was that there were a few episodes of that world tour where they did see that there were gargoyles in other countries too. Like they found them in London. The episode in London, MIA, is a really good one. It's well animated. That's one where that's a big Phoenix Gate one. And then they find gargoyles in Japan, and I think the other one is Guatemala.
And they find gargoyles there?
Mm-hmm. I think there's like 4 of them. It's like that was kind of the environmental, like protect the rainforest episode.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, yeah, they got like we said with the gun episode, they did get socially conscious from time to time. Yeah, but any other? I'm trying to think any other major villains we haven't touched on or characters.
I kind of touched on Savarius a little bit.
Isn't he only in like one episode?
No, he's in a couple. Oh. He's like I said, he's the one that's responsible for having Elisa's brother mutated. Like, he took him and some other humans and made these, like, gargoyle, mutates. He's the one who created Thalog. He does show up in one World Tour episode. He's the one who reveals to Angela that Goliath is her biological father.
Well, I mean, duh. I mean, even when they first meet her, like, Elisa points out, like, oh, she looks a lot like Demona, but she has your coloring. And
right.
He says something just like, the children belong to the entire clan.
Entire clan, okay, right. But they sort of have this, like, communal parenting type thing, so they don't really think about biology. So, like, even in the Paris episode, like, Angela's trying to connect with him, and she refers to him as his father, and he's like, hey, all the clan are your parents. Like,
yeah, she's not going to put up with that, though. She's pretty tough.
No, she is. Yeah, she kind of has that. I liked her. She kind of has that naivete because she's, was raised on a magical island by humans. But I mean, she adapts pretty fast, and she's very intelligent. And she definitely has those badass qualities. There's one episode when she, eventually gets to Manhattan, and of course the Lexington, Broadway, and Brooklyn are all like, essentially they're all falling over themselves. They're competing for affections, and they're practically sexually harassing her. And there's this one point where she's just like, enough! Like she's not putting up with that shit.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they haven't had any in 1,000 years, and she's the only other female gargoyle because they're not going near Demona. So,
right.
Who can blame them for being a little horned up by Angela?
Right. And supposedly, from Greg Weisman has said that Lexington is gay, apparently, so.
Oh, it's another one of these post hoc, oh yeah, this character was gay. Even though there was literally nothing in the show to say he was gay. I'm just going to do that after the fact. And it's like, you don't. Like, if you wanted to write a gay character, you could have written a gay character.
Except you couldn't really do that in 1994 or 1995. And a children's cartoon.
No, not so much. But I don't think you can retrofit him as gay. Just because he's, I don't know what. He's not the manliest gargoyle, I guess. But I don't think that makes him gay.
No.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. But it's just funny to me that this happens from time to time where a creator just tries to graft that on as a way of like, no, see, we were ahead of the curve. And it's like, no, you just made that up yesterday. All right. You mentioned Greg Weisman. He's one of the producers. I think he doesn't actually write anything until season 3 when it became the Goliath Chronicles.
No, he wasn't involved in that.
Oh, interesting. I had read something else.
No, I think that's when he I don't know what happened. I think around the time was it Jeff Katzenberg that left Disney?
Yeah.
And I think, because he had a lot of support, and a lot of the whole thing with the world tours, they were going to build all these spin-offs. They kind of wanted to make Gargoyles sort of like, I guess, like that Marvel superhero part of Disney. And then, of course, once, I think they just lost a lot of their supporters. And I guess whenever they went, the Goliath Chronicles, that's just that, like they always say, that doesn't count as canon, and it's not good. Like when you see, like, the first 2 seasons, like, that's why I didn't even bother, like, saying, oh, let's watch, an episode of the Goliath Chronicles because they're bad.
Yeah, it's animated by a different house too, so I don't think it looks as good either. Like it's not quite right. It's just hard to do that. I think there was a hiatus too between seasons 2 and 3, so it's just like it's hard to pick that momentum up.
And also, it was on network on a Saturday morning instead of syndication. I probably watched a little of it at the time it was on, in was it 96, 97, whenever it was, but it's not the same.
And there was only 13 episodes of it made, whereas there was 60, 70 episodes from seasons 1 and 2.
Right.
But I know that they had, at one point they definitely had bigger designs for it. They wanted to, like you said, spin-offs. There's been talk of a live action movie forever. I know even in
they would have to get Keith David to voice Goliath though if they do it.
Well, he's still alive. You could do it. And would you want to do it all CGI? I think it would be cooler to try and do it with makeup to some degree. I think there's some things you would need CGI for, but. Even I know that they were getting scripts from various people in 2018 and even 19, and I think at some point Jordan Peele submitted a script. So there's some hope, I guess, for this property to make a return. I know there's still love for it. I mean, that's why we're talking about it on this podcast, because you and I are not the only ones who still remember this show fondly. I think you can still find some Gargoyles merch at Hot Topic and stuff too. It's still out there. There's a lot of people that have a big soft spot for the show. Why do you think it is that people still are still carrying a torch for this one long after it was canceled?
Let's see. I think it was just it's the storytelling. I think you can go back to it as an adult and enjoy it because you have all those references to King Arthur and Shakespeare and all the historical stuff. And I mean, it's the story. I think especially, and then of course, as you get older, I feel like that relationship between Goliath and Elisa is so strong. That sexual tension is there. And I don't know if a young child really picks up on it as easily, but if you're a teenager or an adult,
Yeah, it's unmistakable for sure. I don't know that that's the part of the show that grabs me the most. I don't need to see this girl have sex with this cartoon monster, but there is a Beauty and the Beast thing going on there for sure.
Oh yeah,
and they're definitely relying on that. And they kind of that poignancy of they can never be together because they're different species, and especially that episode in the mirror where they're both gargoyles for just an afternoon. There is some of that, what could have been.
All right, boy, enough. We're all glad to be back.
It feels weird. Cool, but weird.
I was just getting used to the clock tower.
Oh, you love it here. We've got an incredible kitchen and an even better library.
And so it begins. Gargoyles Chapter 2. Or is it 3? I've lost count.
So, things have come full circle.
Somehow they always do. You know how I feel about you, right?
How we both feel. Yes.
Good. Welcome home, Goliath. Welcome home.
But they have this sort of very just deep platonic relationship that is really compelling to watch. But I think all of the characters are so likable, and that's what makes it work. You really root for them, especially when almost everyone around them is only using them.
All right. I mean, you love the villains too. I mean, I think there's something about in shows now, even shows something I guess an example would be Darkwing Duck, where some of those villains are really a little more one-dimensional.
A little.
But Gargoyles, definitely, those villains are so complex. Xanatos really is a real, as sleazy as he is, I mean, he's a real human being. I mean, he gets married and he has a child. And, I mean, there's something about him that's just, he's a real person. And Damona's as complex as she is. You definitely didn't get complex female supervillains back then.
No, but we've jokingly compared this to Ninja Turtles a bunch, but Ninja Turtles never has this level of emotional complexity for any of its characters. No. And this show is all about that. Part of that's the serialized nature of the storytelling, but again, it imbues all of these characters with so many dimensions and facets to them that it's really kind of incredible. Like, I don't know that there's anything else that's been on for kids lately that quite approaches this tone and this maturity. It's pretty unique in that regard. Almost everything today is way more just like, it's brightly colored and it's sort of pop culture-y and snarky and fun. But I would love to see another show just go take a straight ahead approach to something like this.
Absolutely.
All right, Aim, any other final thoughts on Gargoyles before we bring this to a close?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, of course, as always. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Some admin things before we go. As always, if you have feedback, tweet them to @NostalgiumPod on Twitter or find us at Instagram. And please do follow Nostalgium Arcanum on Instagram because, as I mentioned in the last 2 episodes, I'm now posting bonus reels for just a little extra bonus content to go with each episode once a week. It'll be in the middle of the week. You'll see that. So there's already ones up for all of the episodes from Rugrats forward. So go and subscribe and look for those. And, of course, tell us what you think. If you have thoughts on this episode and our last few on Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead or the Beatles, Rugrats, or any on our upcoming episodes, which include Adventures in Babysitting and Homestar Runner and others. Let us know. And if, of course, you like the show, please tell a friend. And, of course, subscribe and drop us a review on iTunes or Podcast Addict or wherever you found it. That helps us out a bunch. So, Amy, thanks so much again for bringing Gargoyles back into my attention. I had not watched this in a long time, and this was a real treat.
Oh, you're welcome. And I hope to be back again, whether it's, more 90s cartoons or even something that's not animation. Okay.
Well, you get to pick. Whatever it is, you pick next time. So we can do something that is decidedly not a cartoon. So, all right. So that'll do it for this episode. And until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgia Arcanum.
Ready! Prepare to grovel for mercy! You're disgusting. I feel unclean.
Then you let us go?
No. Silence! I said silence, you horrid gnomes. Prepare to receive a horrible, twisting curse that will last 4,000 years. I've got a full day ahead, so let's go. I'm going to apologize. What for? We've tried everything else. Hold your curse, Raskar. Mugging you and your brother was wrong. For my deeds, I wish to say I'm... sorry. My goodness, a gnome actually apologized? And the rest of you? Your willingness to change has so impressed me that I will effect a different curse.
Can you make slow, overweight birds appear out of thin air?
Yes, but I won't. Since you use the day for mischief, henceforth the sunlight will transform you into statues. Only during the night you know life. Live like this until you mend your ways and serve mankind without profit or gain. The sooner you change, the sooner the curse is over. So there, you're cursed. Goodbye.
That's not so bad. We'll have this curse beat in a couple of weeks.
Piece of cake.
Still, time does have a way of slipping by as we continue to skillfully aid mankind in battling evil.